Hey everybody, welcome to the Tommy Trials. My name is Thomas. So welcome to your one-stop shop for everything Helm Hammerhand. So you already know what we're going to be talking about in today's video because you clicked on the video. So no need explaining super duper what we're talking about. But today, September 8th, 2017, the creative director of Monolith and consequently Shadow of War and Shadow of Mordor, Mike DePlatter, said in a video that was released today by Game Informer, which the video you're seeing on screen, there's no audio or anything like that, it's just the video, but that is a video that's by Game Informer. The link to that video is going to be in the description below because that is 100% their video. And if you want to see it and hear Mike DePlatter talk and the fella that's with him from Game Informer, go check that out because that's their video and all I did was recorded it. And that's what we're using as the background footage. But again, that's their video, not mine. So definitely go check that out. Links in the description. That aside, he said that one of the Nazgul, they're going to name apparently all of them, which in the lore, not all of them are ever named. Nonetheless, he did reveal that one of the Nazgul's name is Helm Hammerhand. Which, what a name, right? I mean, my name's Thomas, but I'd be cool with my first name being Helm. Probably wouldn't have been popular in middle school, but I'd love for my name to be Helm now. Nonetheless, Helm Hammerhand. That put some people in quite a rage mode. So for lack of a better way to explain this, Monolith has said that they view Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War as kind of a historical fantasy inside of the lore of Tolkien. So essentially, a historical fantasy would be me creating a total, absolute story that never happened inside of Rome. Right? So, interacting with real people. So our main character interacts with Julius Caesar and he sees Julius Caesar get stabbed and things like that. If you've never seen it, Ben-Hur is a historical fantasy. Fantasy things happen around real events. So that's what happens to Ben-Hur. And Monolith has said that Shadow of War, Shadow of Mordor, both are like historical fantasies inside of the lore. So events that never happened in the lore, but all within the confines of the lore. So, why does the fact that Helm Hammerhand is a ring wraith, a Nazgul, why does that have everyone up in arms? Well, we'll explain that, and then we'll also go into who is Helm Hammerhand, because to me personally, the idea, the concept of Helm Hammerhand being a Nazgul is actually very, very cool. The character himself of Helm Hammerhand, taken out of the lore and just looked at as a character, totally fits as being a Nazgul. I mean, it makes a lot of sense to make that character Nazgul, but here's the issue. And to fully grasp the issue, we have to take a look at the timeline of the Tolkien universe. Not a deep look, because this video would be like 6 hours long. But a gentle look at the timeline of Tolkien's universe. So if essentially the world's created, right, then we have the years of the lamps, the years of the trees, stuff happens. Things are created like elves, dwarves, stuff like that. And then we hit the years of the sun. At this point, there's been about 30,000 years go by, and now years are the way they're supposed to be. So a year in Middle Earth is now the same length-ish as a year in actual Earth. That's kind of because it's fantasy. But after the years of the sun, we hit the first age. So in real life years, you go 3000 BC and you count all the way down to when Christ was around. So you go 3000 BC to nothing, and then you start at AD and then you go up. So now we're in AD 2017. So, 5,000 years ago, it was 3000 BC. So that's kind of how real life time works. So if you have never learned that yet, now you have. If you had learned that and forgotten, now you know again. Or I've just told you something you already know, but nonetheless, that's how real time works. Within the Tolkien universe, we've got those 30,000 years, and then we hit the ages. So there's essentially 4 ages in the lore. There's the first age. I got real creative with the names here. First, second, third, and fourth ages. Boom. Not super duper difficult. Now, unlike with real life time, where it goes something BC and then something AD, and here we are. This all has happened. we have the First Age, which is roughly 600 years long. It's about 590 years long, but for ease of math, we're going to say it's 600 years long. Stuff happens, and then the First Age ends. Then the Second Age starts. Now, unlike with real life time, when a First Age ends, it went all the way up to year 590 and ended. Then we had the Second Age, where you have SA, and then the years just start over. So you got SA1, and then boom, on you go, through 3,440-ish years. Then you hit the Third Age, and it starts over again. So that's kind of how the time works within the Tolkien universe. Now, here is the dealio. Celebrimbor becomes the Lord of Eregion in year 1350 of the Second Age. In the year 1500 of the Second Age, Celebrimbor helps Sauron create the Rings of Power. We see that in Shadow of Mordor. It's really, really cool. It was nice to see it brought to a story point where we could actually visually see it instead of reading about it or hearing about it. In the year 1600, Sauron creates the One Ring. Barad-dûr is completed. Celebrimbor realizes what's going on, and elves and Sauron start fighting. The 3 rings of the elves are hidden so that Sauron can't take advantage of those. In the year 1697, Eregion is destroyed. Elrond establishes the refuge of Rivendell, or Imladris, and Celebrimbor dies. So in the actual lore, 1697, he just dies. Eregion's destroyed, and he and his family, they die. Now, we know already within the creative liberties and the historical fantasy of Shadow of Mordor that in the Shadow of Mordor timeline, Celebrimbor doesn't die. He's taken to Mordor, where he takes the One Ring for himself, and he tries to fight Sauron, and he fails. So spoilers to the first game if you haven't played it. Sorry that I didn't warn you ahead of time. I'll try to put something in post so you know that I'm going to spoil the game. But nonetheless, in that historical fantasy, Celebrimbor takes the One Ring, and he tries to fight Sauron, and he fails. That never happens in the actual lore. So that already, but I'm just going to say that even within that, he probably would have died, because Eregion would still be destroyed in 1697, so he probably would have died in around 1699 or year 1700 of the Second Age. So that's when Celebrimbor dies. Now, the Rings of Power at that point have already been around for 100 years, but nonetheless, the Ring Wraiths, or the Nazgul, don't show up until the Second Age year 2251. Now, why is that a big deal? Well, we know that there's 3,400-ish years in the Third Age, which means there's still another 1,200 years or 1,200 years left before the Third Age even starts. Helm Hammerhand was born. He was a king of Rohan. He was the 9th king of Rohan. Rohan didn't even exist in the Second Age. When Celebrimbor was around, when Sauron was still deceiving everybody, Rohan didn't exist. But nonetheless, we shall continue. Helm Hammerhand was born in year 2691 of the Third Age. So he was born roughly, just to make the math easy, 3,800 years after the Ring Wraiths were first seen. That's not even from when the rings were made, which in Shadow of War we're going to see a ring given from Sauron in his fair form to Helm Hammerhand, which we'll see it in the gameplay in the background. But nonetheless, we're going to see Celebrimbor and Sauron in his fair form give the ring to Helm Hammerhand, who's not supposed to be born for another 3,800 years. That's why people are up in arms. To call it a historical fantasy within the lore and then yank a character way out of his own timeline and plop him here is snapping the lore in half. Now, from a story standpoint, I think the idea is incredibly novel, and I love it. I love it, and we're going to talk about who Helm Hammerhand is and why I think he's a perfect choice to be a Ring Wraith. But yanking him way out of where he belongs is crazy talk. It's essentially like, you know, this isn't even incredibly accurate, but if we go back 2,000 years to when Rome was around, and we create a historical fantasy there where not real events happened, but they interact with the real people, and then we put George Washington in the middle of it. Now, to be fair, if we put George Washington in the middle of Rome, we're only putting him about 2,000 years out of where he belongs, not even 3,800 years out of where he belongs. But it's something like that. And while the idea itself of having George Washington with a Roman shield, a Roman helmet on his head, and a sword is really, really cool, he doesn't belong there. And to call it a historical fantasy and then put George Washington in the middle of Rome would be crazy talk. So that's why people are up in arms. To call this game a historical fantasy game and then put someone who absurdly does not belong is why people are very much unhappy about it. And I can't necessarily blame the lore purists for being unhappy about this. Now, who is Helm Hammerhand? So essentially, Helm Hammerhand, he was born in year 2691 of the Third Age, so roughly 3,800 years after when the ring race were first seen, the Nazgul were first seen. And he became the 9th king of Rohan in 2741. He ruled for 17 years before Rohan suffered from a devastating Dunling invasion. So, in case you're curious, the information that I'm gathering is going to be coming from good old-fashioned online and the Tolkien Encyclopedia by David Day, and a little bit of my own personal knowledge of the lore itself, but everything I've double-checked before rambling on and on about. So, he was born then, he became a king. His father had fought open warfare with the Dundlings, who actually operated at the time from the captured fortress of Isengard. That was before Saruman took it over. But during his reign, he came into conflict with an arrogant, wealthy, and powerful landowner named Fricka, or Freka, but just for lack of a better knowledge of how to pronounce it, we're going to say Fricka. He was a Dundling with Rohirric blood, and he claimed to be a descendant of one of the former kings of Rohan. He held a whole lot of land. He viewed King Helm with both contempt and scorn, and Helm didn't trust him. In 2754 of the Third Age, Fricka attempted to intimidate and coerce King Helm into giving his approval and consent to an arranged marriage between Fricka's son Wulf and Helm's daughter. Fricka marched to a meeting of the king's council in Edoras with a great force of men, planning to threaten the king into complying with his demands. In the resulting quarrel, Helm Hammerhand smote Fricka with a single blow from his fist. The blow was so great, Fricka died soon after. Enraged, the men of Fricka left Edoras, and King Helm declared Wulf and his kin enemies of the king. 4 years later, in 2758 of the Third Age, a combined force of Dundlings under the leadership of Wulf and the Corsairs of Umbar, which we see in the third Lord of the Rings film, overran Rohan. Helm was defeated in battle at the crossings of Isen, and Helm withdrew into the Hornburg, which was later renamed in his honor to Helm's Deep, and there he endured a long siege. The Hornburg held a large horn, which we see Gimli blow in the second Lord of the Rings movie and book, although we don't see it happen, we read about it. The Hornburg held a large war horn, and whenever it was blown, Helm would break through the Dundling ranks, very similar to how Theoden and Aragorn break through the Uruk-hai ranks in the second movie and book. But whenever the horn was blown, Helm would break through the Dundling ranks, slaying many of their men. It is believed that many of the men he killed, he did so with his bare hands. He was a very strong man. It was said that grief and hunger made Helm more ferocious. After one of his adventures into the ice cold, because the siege of the Hornburg lasted like for an entire winter, but after one of his rideouts, he died and did not return. His body was discovered the next morning, frozen in the snow, still standing, his eyes open, ready to fight. This led to a belief among the Rohirrim and Dundlings that even in death, the wraith of Helm Hammerhand still wandered through Rohan and defended the Hornburg. So Helm died in 2759 of the Third Age at the age of 68. He wasn't shot with arrows like we see in the gameplay, and he most certainly was not alive when the ring wraiths were created. So when it comes to the actual lore of Tolkien, Helm Hammerhand has no place being a Nazgul. That being said, however, I think the concept, so if we take this guy that we just heard about, and we isolate him from the lore, and we look at him, and we say, freakishly ferocious guy, got so mad at a man for wanting to coerce him into an arranged marriage between he and his daughter, or this man's son and his daughter, that he punched him. He hit him so hard that he killed him. So he had a temper on him, and he was incredibly strong. And he was so courageous or ferocious or whatever you want to call him that he would ride out into the ranks of these people who were besieging him on a killing spree with his bare hands. That's amazing. He was called Hammerhand because of his grim nature, great strength, and prowess. He was also known to fight barehanded sometimes, attributed to the superstition that if he used no weapon would upon bite him. That's a quote, actually. The statue of Hammerhand was erected in Helm's Deep's courtyard, which we see in the second Lord of the Rings movie. So, that's who this guy was. Hammerhand. Because his hands were strong as a stinking hammer. So if you take that and you isolate him and you think, would he make a good Nazgul? I would argue that he very much would. Because, holy moly, I mean, even once he died, they thought he was a Wraith. So to make him a Nazgul, well, that's really cool. And yes, you can mess with, it's a historical fantasy, so why not mess with a little bit of his backstory? So, okay, cool. But pulling him so far out of where he belongs is just a little extreme. I don't know if they'll make him a king of Rohan in the game or not, and if they do, that just means they're putting Rohan, they're creating a kingdom in a timeline where it didn't exist. Because Rohan was not even created, as far as I'm aware, until I believe it was sometime in the Third Age. I think, let me look, because they were very good with horses. But they have taken the notion that he's very good with horses and made it so that he's very good with all animals, which I think is a lovely little idea. So, Minas Ithil, which is destroyed at the beginning of Shadow of War, was destroyed in the year 2000 of the Third Age. So, the events where Minas Ithil is being destroyed. Now, the Lord of the Ring, or the Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War are supposed to take place between The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings, meaning that the timeline it's supposed to belong in puts this as happening afterwards, after Helm Hammerhand was alive and everything that he did and we talked about it happened. But Minas Ithil in the lore is actually destroyed in the year 2000. So Minas Ithil was destroyed for like the second time 1,000, or no, scratch that, about 600 years, 700 years before Helm Hammerhand and all the events that he had happened. So they are taking things and twisting them around in the lore and kind of bundling it all up and saying, here we go. So it's, to call it a historical fantasy may be a little extreme. It's more of a fantasy that happens inside of the universe. Everything else is kind of so, you know, I'm okay with it because I think that it will make a great story point. I think it'll be really cool to see how they take this character who was in the lore, called Hammerhand, not because he had a hammer in his hand, but because his hands were so freaking strong that they called him Hammerhand. So I'm really excited to see him in the game. I think it's going to be very cool. The fact that they've taken the concept of the Royal Kingdom being good with horses and then consequently giving Helm Hammerhand a Ring of Power and making him a Nazgul and giving him control over all the animals of Mordor, I'm okay with it. But there's already been a lot of controversy surrounding this game, and this just kind of adds to it a little bit. I don't want to make a big deal of it because I know that there's a lot of effort that goes into creating a video game, and I'm very excited for Shadow of War. I've already purchased it and paid for it, and I'm not going to cancel my pre-order just because they've broken the lore a little bit. Shadow of Mordor already did that by making Celebrimbor into something more than he really wasn't. He just died, and that was kind of it. I mean, Celebrimbor didn't do anything else. Eregion was destroyed, and Celebrimbor was destroyed right along with it. But, so that already the lore was already kind of broken. But I'm really excited about it because there never was a ranger named Talion in the lore. He never bonded with a wraith and gave Sauron all kinds of grief. That never happened. So to put more things that never happened into the game and whatnot, that's fine too. But that's the reason people are upset. To call it a historical fiction and then yank someone way, way, way out of the timeline that they belong in is why people are unhappy. But that's who Helm Hammerhand is. That's why it seems that most people aren't super thrilled with the fact that Helm Hammerhand was revealed to be a Nazgul. But what do you think? What are your thoughts? Put them down in the comments. Are you excited that Helm Hammerhand's going to be a Nazgul? Are you able to kind of pull him out of where he belongs in the timeline and take the character and the essence of the character himself and make him a Nazgul? Are you able to do that in your mind, or can you, with your Tolkien lore in mind, just unable to be able to pull it off? Let me know in the comments. What are your thoughts about the microtransactions? You can keep those to yourself because I'm pretty sure they're going to be negative. Most people aren't that happy about it. I like to keep the comment section not a cesspool of negativity if we can, so that would be amazing. But if you just can't help yourself, then by all means use the comment section as your platform to tell people why they shouldn't buy the game, so we can all ignore you. Go for it. I mean, I'll wait here. You can do it. All right. In seriousness, though, let me know what you're thinking. There's already been, like I said, some controversy following the microtransactions, the fact that there's that DLC that I've already bought as well, commemorating and forever putting him in the game, which I love. One of the people who was involved in the creation of Shadow of War and Shadow of Mordor, I think. I'm not going to name him or anything, and I'm not going to talk about that controversy one way or the other. There's plenty of other videos on YouTube regarding that. But that $5 DLC, where the proceeds, if you live in one of the 46 states that are actually participating, the proceeds go to the family of the gentleman who passed away this year, which is really, really just unfortunate. So there's already been some controversy. Now this, it's to be honest with you, it's not the first time that these games have broken the lore. Gandalf urges the White Council to attack Dol Guldur in the Third Age year 2851. Aragorn's born in 2931. Faramir's born in 2983. The Ring Wraiths are given the task of retrieving the One Ring in 3018 of the Third Age. And the events of the Lord of the Rings really start in year 3018. So if I was going to guess, I'd say that the stuff in Shadow of Mordor, Shadow of War, probably happened, after Aragorn is born. So that would put us roughly in the 29s. Because Aragorn was born in 2931. So I'd say that, roughly in the 2950s is when the events of Shadow of Mordor, Shadow of War happen within the timeline, which is 900 years after Minas Ithil is destroyed and the Palantir is taken. So already, which I was excited to see Minas Ithil and then consequently Minas Morgul later, but already they're snapping the lore. So it's not the first time they've done it, and I'm certain there's going to be a couple of other things where it happens again. But I'm not that upset about it, and this is not the first time it's happened. So to see people getting especially upset over this particular reveal, I wasn't entirely understanding why this one upset them any more than another reveal that kind of broke the lore did. But I think this game is being crafted with love of the original lore, and I think it's important to remember that it is a fantasy. And if you can keep that in mind, then I don't think you'll have any trouble enjoying the game, as long as you can just kind of write off the fact that it's a fantasy. Historical fantasy, maybe not so much. I think historical fantasy may be a little bit of stretching of terms, but that aside, it is a fantasy within that particular lore. So that's who Helm Hammerhand is. That is why people are upset. Let me know what you're thinking in the comments. I've put in my 2 cents worth there. why I'm not really that upset about it. I'm still going to get the game. It doesn't upset me one lickety-split. But let me know what you're thinking. Go ahead and click on my logo if you want to subscribe. Let me know if you want more Lord of the Rings information. We can keep making these videos. I'm more than willing to do the research for you guys. Go ahead and check out the playlist on the channel called Road to Shadow of War. We play through the entire game of Shadow of Mordor, including all the DLCs as well, and now we're doing some of the challenges, and we'll be you'll be all caught up in the story, the fantasy story of Shadow of Mordor for when Shadow of War comes out October 10th, I think, but sometime early in October nonetheless. So, until next time, please like the video if you appreciate the effort I put in, the information I gave you, or if you just like Lord of the Rings stuff in general, or really anything that's good in the world. Think of happy little puppies, and then when you're looking at the decision of clicking the thumbs up or the thumbs down, look at this potentially cute little puppy staring at you with these big anime eyes, and then click the happy thumbs up button, and you can have that fake puppy. I'll give him to you. Here, have the fake puppy, because you just clicked on that like button, so I appreciate that. But click on the logo if you want to subscribe. And until next time, my friends, shake hardy.